Hi, and welcome back to the Sketchbox. In my sophomore year of college, I was drinking with my friends as one does. And in a drunken haze, I remember two of my close friends listening to a band that had a singer with an odd cadence. They sang along with it. In 1984, I was hospitalized for approaching perfection. I remember being sort of put off by the singer, but I was intrigued. I didn't really think much of it for a few months, until one day I was bored and I put on that record to see why they liked it so much. With an attentive listen, I found myself awestruck by the unique take of folky rock storytelling I was hearing. This was before I had really opened my mind to folk and country music, but it resonated with me a lot. There was something so comforting in the nook of dark poetry I found myself bundled in. This was the music of Dave Berman with the band Silver Jews. And today we are going to discuss the tragedy, harmony, and beauty that is to be observed looking back at Dave's life. Before I start this video, I would like to recommend these two videos, and they'll both be linked in the description below. The Silver Jew 2007 documentary is a must-watch and a great insight into Dave's cadence and the band's first tour. The second video is a great analysis of Berman's artistry by Alex's Head. His interpretations break down Berman's writing in a greatly digestible way. These two videos inspired me to learn more about his life, so go watch them. Without further ado, this is the Dave Berman episode. There are many different members throughout the lifespan of the Silver Jews, but for the purpose of this video, I am mainly going to focus on Dave himself. Mainly because the lineup of the band changed a lot throughout its lifespan, and Dave served as the main art director. David Craig Berman was born on January 4th, 1967 in Williamsburg, Virginia. He was born into a secular Jewish family that was pretty much lacking in creativity. His father at the time was a labor law attorney, and his mother was a stay-at-home housewife. Early on in his childhood, his parents divorced. His dad went to Dallas, Texas, and his mom went to Wooster, Ohio to live with her parents. He's quoted saying that his childhood was grindingly painful, and he didn't really stay involved with his family through his adulthood. In 1979, he was basically forced to move in with his dad on the grounds of him growing up to be a wimp, and he really didn't want to live with his dad. His father, Richard Berman, became a corporate lobbyist for firearms, alcohol, and other industries. This occupation made Dave resent his father even more in his adolescence, and for good reason, I'd say. This displacement and resentment towards his living situation caused Dave to develop treatment-resistant depression during high school, and it led him to experimenting with drugs at a young age. At this age, he also started writing poetry to his girlfriends, and he was very well read. Reading the works of authors such as William Faulkner and Henry Miller made him feel less alone in his struggles with depression, and more empathetic to others who suffer the same. He had taken interest in his friend's keyboard and was also inspired at the time by the Dallas New Wave scene in the early 80s. Eventually, he graduated high school, and being too unconcerned to apply for college, his dad had his secretary complete and submit applications for him. He got accepted into the University of Virginia in 1985. It was here where he met collaborators Stephen Malkmus, Bob Nastovich, and James McNew while attending the shows in the area. The four of them created a band called Ectoslavia that they would play in throughout college. Dave said in his second year of college he smoked PCP every day, so it's safe to say the drug use was continuing to increase throughout these years. He has also been quoted saying, "From age 15, I went on to take every drug in every way." After graduating in 1989 with a degree in English literature, he moved in with Stephen Malkmus in a small apartment in Hoboken, New Jersey. It was in this very apartment they would start writing songs together and eventually come up with the name Silver Jews. During these early years of Berman and Malkmus messing around, Steve was also forming the band Pavement. This coincidence, combined with the success of Pavement, caused people to confuse the Silver Jews as a side project of Pavement. This misconception bothered Dave, and he was open about his frustration with it. It was one of the reasons the band didn't tour until 2005, along with Dave's preference for keeping it anonymous and enjoying the artistry of making records instead of touring. Dime Map of the Reef was the band's first of two EPs. With both EPs being recorded on a Walkman, saying it was made on a budget would be an understatement. Released in 1992, this EP is super lo-fi because of their technological and financial limitations of the time. Still, you can hear the ideas in the band's music and what they would become eventually. It sounds like it's just a few people, mainly Steven and Dave, just playing guitar and singing into one microphone, sometimes accompanied by muffled drums. Though it's brash, I can't help but find a sweet charm in this drugged out bunch of early recordings. The song Canada has a really catchy chorus, and it just makes me feel nostalgic about making songs with my friends. The last song ends abruptly with Steven singing, and you just hear someone, presumably Dave, interrupt and say, "We're running out," referring to the tape, I assume. Overall, I really enjoyed this EP though. The Arizona record was their second EP released in 1993. The microphone clipping is just the same as the previous record, but I feel like things got more pronounced in their sound. It feels a bit more structured, but it still has that same sort of drunken charm of the first record. The first song, Secret Knowledge of the Backroads, features a really nice guitar chord progression and comical lyricism from Steven and Dave. The Walkman microphone really complements the tone of the guitar on this one, and the drums are just quiet enough not to clip. At some point, Malcolmus and Berman harmonize on the verse saying, "Kick the can, kick the sand, into the face of another man." I'm not exactly sure what it means, but it resonates with me for some reason. By looking at the comments, I found out there's a Pavement version of this song, but everyone in the comments section said this version is better. The final track of the EP, Bar Scene from Star Wars, still holds up great in my opinion. It starts with a subtle scratching, and then a series of bright strummed guitar chords delicately washes over you. Some synths come into play over it, and I have to say it feels very accurate to the title of the song. Very spacey, but with a melancholic touch that feels comforting. I don't know why, but this is one of my favorite of their songs. Though these EPs weren't commercially successful, they garnered attention from the right people. Apparently Kim Gordon took notice of these, and Will Oldham, which would eventually lead to the band having a chance to make a full-length studio record. Starlight Water, released in 1994, was the first chance for the band to record an album. The tracklist begins with Introduction To. Not sure what that means, but hey, that's the type of sarcastic absurdism you're in for when you listen to this band, right? My favorite track on this record is the second song, Trains Across the Sea. It has this really nice detuned piano part that is mixed very well with the chords, and Dave's lyrics are ambiguous but so relatable at the same time. I think that's the genius of his poetry. He treads a fine line of writing lines that are up for interpretation, but you can feel his experiences shining through. I always have this one part of the song stuck in my head. "It's been evening all day long, and how could something so old be so wrong?" Which I read as an alcoholic justifying their behavior. The last song is an instrumental over a recording of friends talking and drinking at a bar. The track has a really upbeat feel with fun guitar chords and a keyboard part that doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a cheery end to the track list. In 1994, he published a 3,000-word article titled Clip-Ons High, the diary of a New York art museum security guard. It's somewhat of a diary that is manifested through short excerpts of unfiltered thoughts from David's mind. It's satirical, angry, sad, and every now and then you get dosed with a poignant sense of profoundness. It's a good read overall. I didn't think I would read it all for this video, but I started it and next thing I knew it was over. I work in retail, so I can somewhat relate to the experience of just killing time, but at least for me there's busy work. His observations paint a good picture of the madness that comes from standing in one place for 6 hours straight every day with no distractions, and how he coped with it. The Natural Bridge was the band's sophomore album that came out in 1996. It's my favorite release of theirs, and I think it has some of Dave's best vocal performances in their discography. The record starts with a song about Dave's dad titled How to Rent a Room. It's pretty spiteful, like a country diss track, and the lyrics detail his issues with lines like, "I know you laughed when I left, but you really only hurt yourself," and "You're a tower without the bells, you're a negative wishing well." Later on in the album, we get my favorite track called Dallas. The transitions in this song are really nice, and the lyrics tell a story of a lonely musician adrift in Dallas. I think this is a good example of Dave's ability to paint a sarcastic and slightly melancholic picture of America. There's one line on this track that particularly humors me when he says, "Supper's on me, boys, my record just went aluminum." I know throughout this video I'm going to be reciting a lot of lyrics. I wouldn't normally reference lyrics so much, but Dave just has this exceptional skill with his background in poetry. Some would say that his lyrics are the main draw to the music, and that makes sense because he says that he writes all the lyrics first before adding instruments. A practice that is typically done in reverse with most musicians. It just goes to show you how unique he was. His unconventional songwriting practices and apparent use of poetry really sells it. But for me, it's the whole package that makes the band such a great listening experience. But if he wrote the lyrics first, you may be wondering, how and why did he choose the country-like style we hear behind the vocals? Well, luckily for us, he touches on this exact topic in the Believer magazine interview. Why do I flirt with country music? My skills are rudimentary, vocally and musically. The vocals are recitative, pretty close to common speech. The music is simple, consisting of the chords you might learn in beginner guitar lessons. The subject matter can be sentimental and or funny in ways that would be disqualitative in other art forms. It's also a position in the field that is relatively empty. Few of country music's practitioners are willing to unashamedly experiment with content that is explicitly uncountry. I'm completely unconstrained by questions about authenticity, I just don't care. Reading that quote makes my and some of my friends' interests in the band make a lot more sense. None of us really listened to country music intentionally at the time, but we were all really drawn to this odd, dark version of it. I think it's really interesting how the intent behind the music can change a lot about how the listener enjoys the compositions. But anyways, back to the record at hand. The 9th track, Frontier Index, has some nice droning lead guitar parts and really dynamic bass lines harmonizing but changing throughout the song. The album cover shows a really minimalistic painting of a horizon with a shooting star. The colors are nice and it sets a good vibe for the record. The same artist and childhood friend, Chris Kaiser, painted it. They ended up using another one of his paintings for their next record, American Water. Released in 1998, this album is the most critically acclaimed Silver Jews release. Most of their bangers, so to speak, are on this record. The first track, Random Rules, has the infamous line that drew me in as an introduction. The song has a really nice solo performed by Steven, and he is riffing around so much on this album. And I really think that Dave and Steve's collaboration on this album is what makes it so good and their best album by most people's definition. My favorite track from this one is called People. It has an amazing bass line that truly never gets old. Before the first verse hits you, you get a nice phased out muted strumming part that lingers in the left ear nicely. Steve and Dave harmonize well in the chorus, and this one is also one of their most popular tracks. I could go on further about this album, but I feel like if you're watching this video, then you've probably already heard the album. In 1999, he released a poetry book titled Actual Air that was very successful and is still well renowned to this day by fans of poetry. He demonstrates an amazing ability to put you in the shoes of the narrator in different poems through well thought out details. His poetry in this book was described by fellow poet Billy Collins as the voice I have waited so long to hear. Around 1994, David was at a party where he met Cassie Merritt. The next thing he knew, he woke up at her house and noticed that she owned all of his records. She was a big fan of his art, and this led to a very supportive relationship between the two, and also led to her joining the Silver Jews as their bassist and second vocalist. They moved to Nashville together in 1999 and got married shortly after. In 2001, the Silver Jews released their album, Bright Light. You guys, editing you in here, I said the album's name was Bright Light in the video, but I meant to say Bright Flight. So, my bad. It feels a bit more twangy, and I think that the environment of Nashville had somewhat of an effect on the recordings. There's a lot more slide guitar stuff, too. Tennessee is a kind of he said, she said duet performed by Dave and his wife Cassie. It's a wholesome tune. The You're the Only 10 I See wordplay and dynamics of the two's vocals on this song make for a sweet proclamation of love. I think that the most interesting song on this record is Remember Me. The song tells a whole life story of a man in 3 verses, divided by alterations of the phrase, I remember me. The first verse tells the listener how the narrator met the love of his life. The second verse shows their love, and then out of nowhere, while the narrator is proposing on the ground, he gets hit by a truck. The third verse shows the aftermath of him waking up from a long coma, and the love of his life has long moved on to marry someone else. He goes on to buy land and the truck that hit him with the settlement money. He even questions if the past memories were even lived by him. The narrator feels estranged and has lost his identity. The last chorus says, I remember him, in the third person, wrapping up the story neatly. During the early 2000s, David started to get addicted to crack cocaine, and it was really becoming a problem. So much so that he ended up overdosing on alcohol, tranquilizers, and crack. He wrote a suicide note to Cassie, and he had his wedding suit on in the crack house he went to do it. After living through that, he must have had some sort of religious experience, because he became completely devout to Judaism in this period of his life. This faith wouldn't last forever though, and it was something that he would struggle with for years after this period of time. They went on their first tour in 2005. Having never played a live show before, Dave was convinced by God to go on a world tour.
I had this idea. I was sitting in my basement and I was like, what if I went on tour this time? And I thought, let me think about that, I'll go for a walk. And I got to the beginning of the street and I said to myself, I said to God, or I thought it was myself, show me, if I go on tour next year, 2006, what if I toured the whole world, really extreme? What if I just spent the whole year working on that? Is that the right thing to do? Would harm come to me? Am I strong enough? Could I say yes to that and actually follow through? And I walked down to the end of the street, and in the same field, it was filled with wild strawberries. Really, these little wild strawberries. And out of nowhere. And Cassie came. They were really there.
Yeah.
And, you know, a basic symbol of wealth, health, and happiness is fruitfulness.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, yeah. So I went back home. I told Dan at Drag City that I wanted to look into finding a booking agent.
If you want to see more about this tour, I can't stress enough how good this documentary is. During the tour, they played a show in Israel, and they took a few days to stay there. Dave wanted to explore the place and get more in touch with his newfound God. Near the end of the documentary, there was a scene that kind of made me uncomfortable, but happy at the same time. It shows Dave reading a prayer given to him by a rabbi. As he is reading it, his voice begins to tremble, and he starts crying due to the beauty he sees in the text. It feels a little bit too intimate, but it shows us how invested he really was in the religion at this time of his life. Released in 2005, Tanglewood Numbers feels like a breath of fresh air for David. He really sounds like he has a new lease on life after living through the lowest of lows. The sense of optimism gave us this very energetic and upbeat album. To me, this feels like a more guitar-focused Silver Jews album. For example, the track Punks in the Beer Light, one of the band's most popular songs, has an amazing lead guitar section that sets the tone for the whole album. The Poor, the Fair, the Good is a waltz that starts with a really nice lead guitar part that seemingly transitions into the first verse and carries on harmonizing with the strings later on in the song. Overall, the instrumental compositions are top-notch on this album, and we hear some more twang shine through with the banjo and violin being featured more. Cassie's performances on this album are striking as well. I recommend you listen to this one if you're looking for a more upbeat experience with Silver Jews. In 2008, we didn't just get the housing market crash, we also got a new Silver Jews album titled Lookout Mountain, Lookout Sea. Some tracks that stood out to me on this record were Suffering Jukebox, Open Field, and Party Barge. Cassie's chorus on Suffering Jukebox is great, and the picture it paints of this neglected jukebox in a corner while everyone around it is happily socializing is just a cool song idea. Open Field has some nice keyboard parts and a really catchy repeated chorus throughout the track. This album doesn't really live up to the standards of the band's previous albums, but considering they made some truly amazing records before this one, I can't imagine trying to make a better album than The Natural Bridge or Starlight Water. You can't just keep making amazing records of that caliber. Upon its release, Pitchfork reviewed the album and gave it a 6.7. The average rating of the album hurt David after claiming he put everything into the album. He said that he didn't want to make a bad record before ending the band, and so he decided to stop working on the project and stop touring. In early 2009, Silver Jews announced their breakup via a post on the Silver Jews message board from Dave. Since the band's beginning, his father had risen in power and led some horribly unethical campaigns against animal rights, trade unions, and even worked against anti-drunk driving campaigns. In the post, he labels his dad as Dr. Evil. Being fed up with his lobbying, he decided to pursue a solution to his atrocities, and he wrote this on the topic. A couple of years ago, I demanded he stop his work, close down his company, or I would sever our relationship. He refused. He has just gotten worse, more evil, more powerful. We've been estranged for over 3 years. Previously, I thought that through songs and poems and drawings I could find and build a refuge away from his world. But there is the matter of justice. And I'll tell you, it's not just a metaphor. The desire for it actually burns. It hurts. There needs to be something more. I'll see what that might be. According to Dave, Cassie took it the worst, as she was still invested in the band. But ultimately, she trusted Dave as a spouse and understood his reasoning for ending it. Later on that year, he would release a book containing minimalist cartoons titled The Portable February. It received mixed reviews upon release, but it seems people have come around to the book throughout the years. Once the band was over with, he completely left the public eye and became indefinitely reclusive. He had no job and devoted a lot of his time to reading books about political science, history, and public policy. During this time, he still posted a bit to his blog Menthol Mountains, which dates back to 2011 and has over 400 entries to read through. I'll link it in the description if you want to dive into the depths of that. From what I looked through, it's mainly art, music, political cartoons, historical documents, photos, and quotes that David wanted to document. Also, some comical observations. Some entries that stuck out to me were the list of other Dave Bermans, transcripts of German scientists' conversations after the atomic bomb was dropped, and whatever this is. The hatred for his father manifested itself into a TV show David wrote based on his father. He was in conversation with HBO about it, but it never got filmed and produced. I really wish I could have seen this show come to fruition and display some much-needed criticism for the politics of the time period.
When I played the last Overdue show was right around the time of Obama's inauguration. And I think I spent the next 8 years really involved in politics.
I see.
And when the election of 2016 came around, I was in the midst of making the record. And so I just ignored it all. And I felt like I had shifted off the burden of caring about this stuff to other people who didn't seem to really care as much in 2012. And all of a sudden people were alarmed by things that had been alarming me for a long time.
He was extremely involved in politics from 2009 to 2016 and said that after the 2016 election, he stopped caring so he could focus on songwriting again. Even going as far as recording in Canada with a new producer, Dan Bahar. Eventually things weren't really working out with that producer, and David was having some writer's block, so he decided to go back to Nashville to write more. After a year or so of writing alone, he felt like he could start recording again, so he reached out to produce the album with the band Woods. He didn't know them, and he hadn't even listened to a full record of theirs, but he had a feeling that they were good for his sound. He believed that his songwriting was strong enough that he could rent a band and not feel like it was a cop-out or anything. Things were going better this time around, and he ended up finishing recording the self-titled record under the new name Purple Mountains. Before we talk about the sonic aspects of this album, I think there's some much-needed context. In 2018, Cassie and David separated. She was growing into being a much happier person with an objective of helping others being a main focus in her life. She got a degree in occupational therapy and was enjoying life more and more. It seems the happier she got, the more depressed and reclusive Dave became. These two things weren't inherently related, but they were just way too different to stay together anymore. It seems that the innate hatred for his father had somewhat subsided after he stopped caring as much about politics. So on this record, there's a lot less writing about what he hates, and it's more focused on what he misses about the people he loves in this reclusive time in his life. This album is incredibly dark, but I think David's at peak performance on this album. We immediately get a sense of this morbidity on the first track with the line, "The end of all wanting is all I've been wanting," being repeated. His voice sounds different than it used to, but not in a bad way. The vocals feel a bit more harmonious on Purple Mountains. All My Happiness Is Gone is the second song, and it's a delightful listen. It's a bright and vibrant kind of pop song. The chorus repeats the song title, and it will get stuck in your head without fail. Woods really synergizes well with David on this album, and I think it definitely proves that David's songwriting is so strong he can rent a band and make a record as great as this. In the first verse he sings, "Lately I seem to make strangers wherever I go." And this motif of strangers comes up again on the album with the song, "She's Making Friends and I'm Grown Stranger," directly referencing his separation with Cassie. The song that got me the most emotional was "I Loved Being My Mother's Son." It's a wholesome ode to his mother who died recently before making the album. After researching for this video, this song feels even more encumbering. His mom seems to be the only loving guardian he had, and at this point, it seems he wasn't ready to not be his mother's son anymore. His melancholy reflection of the love he misses hits hard on this one. After separating from his wife, he moved out into a room directly above Drag City Records' offices. At this point, he was completely dependent on the label financially, and he was in a lot of credit card debt. On August 7th, 2019, David committed suicide, leaving his adoring friends and fans heartbroken. He left behind a very personal album for us to enjoy, including some of his final astute observations. This commenter on his last recorded interview sums up his final years well, in my opinion, saying, "David was absolutely gutted at this point of his life, physically, mentally, and financially destroyed. It's amazing that he was able to put out one more amazing album. What a legend." David felt reluctant to say this album was good upon its release, mainly because of all the rock and roll greats that he was a student of having terrible comeback records, all the while believing they were at peak performance. I think that with his self-awareness and exceptional unique talent, David has definitely bypassed this stereotype because Purple Mountains is beautiful. It really is the most autobiographical piece of music that we've ever gotten from Berman. I wish I had known about his music at the time of the release, because when you listen to Purple Mountains within the context of it being made months before his death, it begins to feel more like a suicide note than a comeback album.
Some of the songs, they're sad, and I listen, and I say, no, but I have to jump, something happy happens. But then I feel bad, because the songs are sad, and I say, no, calm down, the meaning, but I'm so happy,
So you know what? In my whole life, I've never ever had the experience of making people happy. I'm always just a guy in a corner, or I might make my mother happy if I bring her a block of wood where I wrote my name on it, Love David. But if you never play live, I've never been around Silver Juice fans, and so to me, I don't even know. I'm like, I never make people happy. I don't do anything. I don't make them sad. Sometimes I do, actually, but it's great to see that you're excited, because I know you mean it.
I really want to say thank you to all of you guys for supporting my channel and watching these videos. I probably wouldn't have made this video if it wasn't for all the nice messages from you guys in the comments. So thanks for letting me geek out about this stuff. Making this video has made me appreciate David's art so much more, and I will truly cherish that. Like and subscribe if you feel obliged, and rest in peace, David Craig Berman.